you know, things are so, it's very complex, right? The systems that we're working with right now with really huge global challenges, that it's even more important to understand the social impacts of the practice. That being aware of the outcomes, the social outcomes, is part of social architecture. I would say that the practice is probably a bit narrowly construed in the sense of the architectural practice for decades has been focused on providing a service to clients and possibly working outside of the realm of the you know, community discussions or expectations, or maybe some of the larger challenges, the big picture challenges in which they're operating. Architects often, I think, or design practices often want to work within the vacuum of, well, I'm just going to design this beautiful thing and it will have its own life, and that's just not the way we experience the built environment at all. Within the system, they have that perspective of these are the steps it takes to get a plan done, versus these are the ways I should think about what is going to happen here in 20 years and the potential impacts and what are we really trying to achieve. It goes beyond the local impacts. I think that there are social impacts that kind of go beyond just what happens around that specific space. And it's crazy because there's a whole ecosystem of civic organizations who are working on this, but they have not made that connection. And I think Gale Institute is here to make those connections. You know, I think my role is to show how policy and design are related, and to show how design can have impact on policy. Making sure, I actually wrote something a couple years ago about how tactical urbanism is not meant to replace government, but it is the first step to show how change is possible. And it can even create the pathways for how policy can change as phases of change versus a top-down edict. I think that we're also, it's part of our job as a nonprofit organization who has an interest in the public interest in design, to show how design and policy are related. And so we think very much that we will get into the realm that I think a lot of architects avoid, such as looking for where there's opportunity to tweak a policy, to look at even advocating for, you know, writing letters to elected officials and advocating for certain issues, to make the case, to do the research required to change the minds. No, I think there are a lot of so-called obstacles, but generally I have found that the biggest obstacle is political will, the lack of political will to make that change possible. The Gale practice and Institute have worked together on quite a few pilot projects. Those projects often they could just go away, and we could just do, you know, a water feature here or pop up here, whatever. But we are insisting on the connection to a larger policy discussion. To, for example, a plaza in Charlotte, I've been insisting that we use that plaza as a catalyst to do more in the city, because the DOT now has a public realm guide that they've put out. So what better use of this catalytic project than to support the DOT's effort to change their business as usual. And that is where you would get a system change. You start to shift the way people think about their vacant lots, think about what the DOT should deliver as an agency. They're taking on this responsibility, but they can't do it if they just put out the guide. They need a demonstration to show how it can work. I think often maybe one of the things I've discovered among designers is they often want to work in an environment that's apolitical, as removed from politics. Designers are extremely innovative when there's a lot of constraints, And when there are a lot of boundaries, they often come up with the most innovative solutions. I think this is the time to be doing those kinds of things, to be very creative, to challenge the formulas that exist. I think different land ownership systems are necessary mostly to prove that maybe the hegemonic land ownership system right now that has taken over a lot of wealthy cities, right? There's a lot of foreign direct investment. There's a lot of people that are not present. There's a lot of hanging on to land to wait for some big profit. There has to be alternative models to challenge the notion that that's the only way that the city can survive.